Hi everybody, thanks for attending this morning. The purpose of this session is to talk about the new lead project, which the schedule says is ARM Kernel Consolidate or Kernel Consolidation 2.0, but subsequently been renamed to ARM Kernel Collaboration. So this session is intended to be a discussion. If I just talk and go through my slides, it's going to be extremely short and we can all go to lunch early. So yeah, please speak up and interrupt it whenever there's something to talk about. I want to go through the scope of the project, so what we're intending to achieve by doing it. And I want to talk a bit about how we work out what we're going to work on, how we work out which of those things we work on in which order, and then talk through some of the tasks we've found to work on already, and talk about how we're going to go about communicating what it is we are working on. So, like I say, at any point, please interrupt, let's talk as we're going, otherwise this isn't going to work. So. First up, scope. So obviously Linaro, is, at least in core engineering, is about shared work. It's not about working on things that only benefit one Linaro member. That's not really what we're here for. So as a result of this, the desire for the Kernel Collaboration Lead project is that we focus on shared engineering, on generic code that benefits many people. So that's kernel frameworks and mostly not drivers. There are some cases where it's beneficial to work on specific drivers. The main ones there are things like the Designware, ARM, and Synopsys IPs that are deployed in a lot of SOCs. So there's mics. Please wait for a mic before speaking, I should have said. Does this include Mali? Mali is not going upstream because ARM do not provide, and nobody provides an open source user space for it. So this is about working upstream, so Mali's out of scope until we get an open source user space for it. Sorry. Yep.
That's Mark Brown's decision or the upstream general decision?
Upstream, the display subsystem have a policy. They do not take code that they can't test end to end with open source user space.
Okay.
So our basic goal here is to go through. Look at what problems members are having with the upstream kernel, identify things that either many different members are having to solve independently, or things that members should be solving but maybe are somehow sidestepping around in their kernels, and make sure that the upstream kernel can do what people need, so it's easier for people to use and adopt, and there's less need for redundant out-of-tree development. So does this seem like a reasonable scope for people?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Linus. Okay. So we've got three basic sources that we're currently planning to look at when we're working out what problems exist. So first up, obviously, Linaro has a lot of people who are upstream maintainers or who just generally work a lot upstream. So these people are obviously going to have a lot of familiarity with the problems that people are seeing when they work upstream. Maybe they've been talking to people who haven't got their code upstream and have some knowledge from that. Maybe they've been looking at hardware developments, which give them some ideas. So we're going to rely a lot on the skills that Linaro's engineers have. We're also going to try and talk as much as we can to member companies. We're going to try and do this in 2 ways, and we've already started doing this at this Connect. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to go and explicitly ask member companies to provide feedback to say, you know, these are the problems we're facing, please work on these ones. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to try to get hold of as many member product trees, so the trees that member companies are shipping to their customers, and look at them and see what problems we can spot in the code we're facing. The idea behind doing both of these things is that, you know, some things will have bubbled up to a management level and people will be aware of them and communicate them to us, but there's going to be a bunch of small little things that maybe have been solved quite happily, and we'll either see them in one tree and see they're a good idea, or we'll notice that there's a lot of different companies have problems in an area which maybe aren't severe enough to bubble up and be something they actively complain about, but which nevertheless merit looking at to make everybody's life easier. So again, does this make sense to people? Or does anybody have any suggestions for other things we should be doing? So David has a suggestion.
In this section examining product and member kernels, is there any discussion around automating that effort? Second of all, is there some way that people that might be doing this that are not, you know, Linaro assignees or employees, how can they help participate in this as well? Is there a mail list or other form?
Yep, so taking the thing about examining product kernels, there is some tooling available to help with looking at people's kernels. Tim Bird talked about that in his session yesterday. And there's also obviously simple tools like Git. You can do diffs and things and do git log. Especially because we're focusing on generic fixes and not on just upstreaming drivers. We're planning to apply a good deal, use this, you know, as a first pass for identifying issues, but apply a good deal of analysis on top of that before we work out what's going on. So it's not a fully automatable process, but there are tools that can help. And in terms of
So I've been talking to Nico about, he's been looking at the build system, trying to identify fat that we could get rid of. So one of the things that we suffer from, when you do a simple git diff between a vendor kernel and mainline, you get a lot of drivers with a lot of hash if deffery.
Yeah.
And for a product that we care about, for a board that we care about, maybe a lot of that could just, we don't care about it because the driver has evolved from like 1990s.
Right. Nobody even has that silicon anymore that's supported by the FDev.
And so we were trying to figure out if there was a way to change the tooling to tell us what parts of the driver were actually getting compiled in, and just get a diff for that, because then it becomes much easier to upstream just those bits.
Yeah.
Instead of having to worry about old silicon, old IP.
That sounds like it could be a really useful tool. Although, again, not drivers for us, but
yeah, I mean, it could be anything.
But the similar things could easily apply in generic code. I mean, people can go and modify generic code, put ifdefs in there as well. So it's
yeah.
So is that tool available now, or is that just a?
So what Nico has right now is just he can identify what functions are not being called at all, right? At a binary level, so.
Going to talk about this after lunch.
Okay.
And Nico has to talk about this after lunch. What's it called, Nico?
How to shrink the Linux kernel without losing your mind.
How to shrink the Linux kernel without losing your mind.
But we need to move that to the next level where we can actually know this at the source code level.
Yeah.
Something interesting to hack on.
Yep. And in terms of non-Linaro people getting involved, there is a device mailing list, which I have a link to later on in the slide set. which people can join, or just in general, if you find something you want to fix upstream, engage upstream. You know, it's in terms of Linaro prioritizing Linaro's activities, we're obviously going to focus mainly on things that benefit our members, but we are active upstream, and we will probably see things that go in through the upstream routes, and like I say, the device mainlining list as well. So it sounds like people are generally fairly happy with how we're planning to look for things. Okay, great. So once we've found problems, we're going to need to work out what we work on. This is obviously something fuzzy that's going to involve some discussion and consideration. Factors we're currently planning to consider include things like how serious is the problem? You know, is this something that is making people's lives miserable? Is it something that would be nice to have? Is it something that affects a small proportion of people? Is it something that affects a lot of people? We're also going to look at the skills we have on the team. So if we have experts in a particular field and there are problems in a particular field, it makes sense to have those experts work on what they know best. And of course, we're also going to listen to what members say in terms of what's causing issues for them. So same question again, feedback, this wonderful idea, you all agree?
It's brilliant.
Kevin says it's brilliant. Any advance on brilliant?
So I think on the importance area, I think one particular area is kernel ABI. So we're also looking at Android consolidation as a project as well. And that approach is kind of from a top-down.
Yeah.
Because what you see is vendors extend driver interfaces in various ways, and then that trickles up into the HAL, and you get.
No, that's definitely the sort of thing which is really important to deal with. Yeah.
And it's really hard to kind of track where there are extensions to kernel ABIs. And
right, yeah, there's some places where you know there's an ABI and it's easy to find that, but there's plenty of places where it's easy to just introduce something that's not on the normal checklist. So yeah, no, that's good feedback, thanks Rob. Okay. So, onto the tasks. So, we've already started looking at this and working through some member trees to try and identify issues and looking at things that people have been asking us for. So we've got a few things on the go just now. We've got integration between the USB subsystem and the power subsystem so that we draw only as much current as we're supposed to draw from chargers. This is something that's mostly a spec compliance issue right now for current generation things, but with USB-C, then the ability to draw huge amounts of current from USB power supplies, it's going to start to become more and more critical for well-functioning production systems. So Baolin Wang, who is sitting at the back there, is working on this. There's a link to his last version of his patch set on the slide there.
So does this work include charger detection and charger mode detection? So there's the battery, USB battery class?
Not yet. But the idea is to provide an aggregation point which can do that. But speak to Baolin to make sure he's...
yeah, because there's a whole bunch of magic in the FIs.
Yeah, no, the idea is to provide aggregation so you can, you've got everything reports the charger thing and then it can go and talk to the rest of the world. Yeah, we're also looking at the MMC subsystem. So there's Ulf is the maintainer for that upstream, and we've had a bunch of member companies coming in and talking to about that. So we're in the process of putting together a plan for improving that. You can throw it if people are ready. Just don't throw it at people who are holding water and a laptop, because then they'll get angry when water goes over their laptop.
We won't mention, yeah, who did that. And I just put a plug in for the eMMC subsystem. It's difficult right now to get a hold of 5.1.
I spoke to a member yesterday and we may have a route forward on that.
Great. So if anybody else may have a source for that type of equipment, please let us know. Something we definitely are lacking. Thank you.
So Arndt Bergman is also looking at making sure that we have IOMMUs ready before we try and use them. That's more and more of a problem as systems start to get more and more use of IOMMUs, and people start to become more and more security conscious and don't want their hardware able to talk to the entire system all the time.
I thought we did deferred probe support for IOMMU.
I don't think. Does it work when the IOMUs are appear transparently?
I don't know.
There's some cases where you couldn't tell you couldn't tell if you couldn't tell if you were supposed to have an IOMU in the first place, but there would be one appearing. You would probe in IOMU free mode. If you know you need an IOMU, it's fine. If you don't, you're in trouble.
Right.
Yeah. We're also looking at tunneling communication from user space directly to coprocessors, mainly for applications like media decode engines. So currently there's no standard user space interface for that. People have to hack their own things up. So we're trying to provide something there. Akashi-san is working on that. So if you identify yourselves. So if people are interested in that work, please go and speak to Akashi-san. Rob already mentioned Android upstreaming. That's there's a separate lead project for that since it goes into the AOSP user space. And that's been handled within LMG.
That session's Friday at 11, I think.
But first up, do people think these are same things to be working on? Is anybody going to complain that we're working on them? Nope, good. Hopefully those are all fairly uncontroversial. We've definitely been talking to members about those already. So in terms of future tasks, we're still at the early stages of looking at the problems that are out there. We've still got a very limited selection of trees from member companies to base our analysis on in particular. So there's likely to be other things that come up as we look more deeply and look more broadly at more member companies. On the slide here, there's a list of other things that we've found so far that we're either going to look at soon or in one case here, the dmcrypt large block optimizations have actually started looking at now. So do people have other pain points they want to share right now? Or do people think any of these things are actually not issues and we shouldn't bother doing anything with them?
I thought you had UART slave devices on your list.
Yep, yes, that got collapsed in with the GPS and other sensors point because they tend to, but yes, that's another issue.
So the idea is to come up with a new framework for the GPS and the sensors. What does that entail?
I was going to leave, but the thing I noticed is that GPS is one of those really bad user experiences in Android, really, because not because it works bad, but because it sucks battery. So you can't really use them without anything going out. And the reason is that they are driven by large user space blobs. They don't even turn up in the kernel diffs. And they are talking over serial port usually, so it needs some investigation. They are wildly out of control, I would say. And for other sensors, and also for GPS, I think industrial I/O is a good fit. It can do these things, and it can be expanded to do the things it's not doing already. So some work in Android, some work in kernel, some work in talking to vendors about firmware and stuff.
So GPS is also Bluetooth devices that are UART based, and today it's just exposed to user space as a TTY device. There's the standard HDMI interface for Bluetooth, but then different vendors have different firmware download methods. You have additional GPIO lines to control like enabling regulators in the device that there's not a way to describe it in device tree yet, and there's no way to expose that to user space without exposing all those details, like needing to know which GPIO line is used. So the idea is to move that into the kernel and do a basically UART slave subsystem.
So, any other issues people want to share at this point, or?
Just want to check for two things. One is say regarding HDMI audio integration. So it's like following the same, it's be the same ELSA sound subsystem as in?
Yes, so currently ELSA and the video subsystem don't really talk about what's going on the on HDMI, and that means that the negotiation about what the device at the remote end of the HDMI link can actually cope with is not really handled at all, and things like hot plug won't function very well. So it's making sure those two bits are joined up, and that the audio drivers for HDMI actually understand what's going on with the HDMI port, and aren't just sitting in a corner by themselves.
Exactly. And another, any plans for, as in currently your FM radio supports us via V4L2. So you think that can be moved to same ELSA sound subsystem to utilize all the audio capabilities in a more fashioned way, or you think it's not at all required?
It's not something that's come up yet, but again, we're in the early stage of integration. I mean, I know that there are issues around the integration there, and there has been for a long time talk about having a graph-based API for all the media devices, which will join them up. So you also have, similar to the HDMI problem, you also have audio, video signal and video signals going in parallel.
Yes.
So being able to represent the fact that they're going together is useful. So, and you will get encoded signals that are contain a combination of audio and video, which needs to be represented somehow as well. So that's definitely an issue. I don't know if moving to ELSA is the solution, or if gluing ELSA and Video for Linux and DRM, KMS and whatnot together in a more efficient and effective fashion is the solution. But yeah, that's something I'm aware of.
Okay.
Is there any ordering or prioritization of that list task in terms of what people are thinking is next one on the list once capacity is available?
Not right now, particular. So I think you came in after we discussed prioritization, but there's considerations there like who we've got, which engineers are available, what their expertise is, and so on. So and what people are asking for at any given time. So it's we don't want to set a priority list in stone and then have to just have hassle adminning the priority list.
Just one, idea, I guess. So with the vendor trees, I mean, quite often you'll need to sign NDAs to get all the out-of-tree drivers and things. So
yep.
Maybe the landing teams that already have NDAs in place might be able to kind of help feed back, what bits are missing.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, like I say, landing teams are also included in the sort of listening to requests from members. So if people want to forward to us suggestions or information, that's always great. And in several cases when we've talked to the members this week, what they've said is talk to our landing teams to get the code. We're aware, there may be considerations like, for example, we may get trees that only employees can engage in analysis of, for example.
Yeah, so this is why I was mentioning gnarly, because if you look at these trees for line of code point of view, it's gnarly.
Yeah.
And weird wireless LAN stacks, not even Mac 802.11. So from a sort of weight for weight perspective, these aren't the big things.
Right, and like I was saying, that's one of the reasons why we're not just going for a metrics-based approach for to identifying what's the most effective thing to work on.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable because you can't impact those actually.
And in fact, in some cases, we're also seeing just very large driver stacks. But when you look at some of these drivers, they are actually just reasonable code that have, for example, they need a data table or something, or they just have a lot of functionality. So there's things that spike up that are not necessarily indicating problems that are really in the scope of this. Okay, any other pain points people want to talk about now, or? Okay, we're all very quiet this morning. So the final thing I want to cover is how we keep the conversation going about what we're working on and whether these are the right things, whether these are making a difference to people, whether new things have come up that we've missed out on. So there's a bunch of avenues that we've thought of already. Maybe there's more that we should be using. Again, if anybody has any suggestions or ideas, please discuss them either now or come and talk to me later. Obviously, we have the standard existing reporting to members through the member updates. We will obviously also continue doing that, continue covering what we're working on at any given time in those. There's also the upstream device mainlining project that Tim Bird was talking about yesterday. So I've put links there to both the wiki page with task lists in it and the mailing list for discussing it and for sending patches to. So we will use that. We will try and make sure that everything we're doing in the scope of this gets CC'd to that mailing list, and we'll put the tasks that we're finding onto that wiki page. We also want to make sure that there are articles on Linaro's blogs and in LWN and in other relevant places covering things we've done once they're available to help people discover new features in the kernel and adopt them. So for example, if we've influenced something for USB chargers, as we hope to have done soon, then we'll try and make sure there's an article out there that people can refer to and learn how to use it. And finally, we expect to have reviews of what's going on at Connect, maybe at other times in some of the steering committee meetings. So that's another avenue people can use to discuss things. Otherwise, please contact either me or TLEs, and we'll try and work out how to incorporate feedback. Does this seem like a reasonable plan of action in terms of communicating what we're doing, and in terms of working out what's important to members? Yeah, I'm gonna assume that silence is uncontainable enthusiasm, and but if people do feel there's issues, I think probably the best way is to just approach us either via the member services or directly to the relevant people in core engineering, and we can discuss what's going on and try to take things forward from there, depending on what the issues are. Otherwise, that's all I had to cover today. So we are finished early. And I look forward to working with you all on this project in the upcoming months and years. Thank you.